My name is Josh Shernoff, and it is my pleasure to introduce to you two women who are known worldwide for their contributions to professional wrestling. First, you know her as Kelly Kelly. You also know her as Barbie Blank. Please welcome Barbie Blank to the stage. And also joining us, ladies and gentlemen, the one and only Mickie James. So first of all, how about that song, right?
I am a grown-ass woman.
I'm just saying.
We're both grown-ass women.
We are.
You know?
So, talking about that, you're both grown-ass women, but both of you started in this business pretty young. A lot younger than maybe some people think. Can you tell us a little bit, just getting right into it? Barbie, we'll start with you, because I think you came into this business on a very large scale at a very young age. Can you tell us about how you got involved in professional wrestling?
Yeah, I was 19, right out of high school. I was going to college. I was modeling, and they saw me, and they called my manager, and they were like, "We love her look. Is she athletic?" And he was like, "Yeah, actually, she was a gymnast and cheerleader and all this stuff." And they were like, "Well, we would love to give her a tryout." And I tried out, and they kicked my butt for a week. And they were like, "Do you still want to do this?" And I said, "Why not? Let's go." And, I moved to Ohio Valley Wrestling, and that's where I started training. Yeah. And I had the best start there. It was amazing. And, yeah, I just started training and got brought up to Kelly's expose 3 months later. So there we go.
And, Mickie, when did you start in the business?
Well, I started training like November '98, I believe, was my first in a wrestling ring. But it was on a much smaller scale, obviously. I was this was Kita Pro in Manassas, Virginia. And then I think my first match was March 3rd, 1999. I remember these dates and the matches. It's crazy. It feels like a long time ago, right? But then sometimes I go, it doesn't feel like that long ago. But I remember having conversations with Barbie. I'm like, I can't imagine, because since I came up grassroots and through that, I was wrestling in front of 30 people, 50 people, and just getting better and trying to get better and learn. But it was much different than being thrown to the wolves, right out here, here's wrestling on a mainstream kind of platform at 19 years old. It was huge, But I remember you coming to OVW when she first came there, and then obviously appreciate the OVW love here. Thanks so much for that. Yeah, I think they were really instrumental in all of our growth, especially in that era of our growth and how to perform and be a wrestler and be a mainstream television wrestler. Yeah.
Snow, big shout out to Al Snow.
Snover, he's here somewhere.
He's here. If he was here right now, he'd go. And that would be it. But so you obviously, breaking into it in the way that you did, when were you first a fan of professional wrestling?
I grew up. I was a fan by proxy, I guess, with my dad, because he was a big wrestling fan. So it was kind of one of our bonding things of watching wrestling with my sisters and my dad. And so I kind of grew up a fan. Then I fell out of it. I was really into my horses and riding and competing, and that was really my focus, a lot of my middle high school year. And then after high school, I'm kind of I don't know what I'm going to do with my life in this thing. And a friend of mine was like, "Oh, you're such a fan, you should go. My buddy has a wrestling school." And that's kind of how I didn't know that that's how you got into wrestling. I just assumed that they found these people somewhere, because to me they were these, Andre the Giants, or Randy Savage was my favorite, and Sensational Sherry. They were just these over-the-top, crazy characters. And the business was really hot then at the time. It's the Attitude Era. It's Stone Cold, The Rock. Wrestling was cool, really cool. And I was obsessed. And so, yeah, I found this school. My buddy suggested it. I walked in. I was like, oh, yeah, I want to do this. Yeah.
So Barbie, when you were modeling, like you mentioned before, and they found you in that way, were you a wrestling fan before you were contacted by them?
I was. I have the same kind of story that Mickie has. I used to watch it with my dad. That was like our bonding thing. And my mom was so against watching it. So I would go to his house and he was like, don't tell your mom, you know. So that was our thing together when I was like 12, 13, and then fell off and, you know, got into, you know, all cheerleading, all that stuff. And yeah. And then when I got the phone call, I told my dad, and he was just like, oh my God, you have to do this, you know, like this is so surreal. This is so cool. So,
Yeah. What was your mom saying?
she was like, oh God, here we go. She's like, I support you, but here we go.
Mom, remember that thing you didn't want me to ever watch?
Yeah.
So women's wrestling, right? That's what we're here. We're going to open this up to some fan questions because they're going to have way better questions than I would. But women's wrestling, you mentioned Sensational Sherry. There was a time where it was the women, you know, you had Fabulous Moolah, you had Sherry, you had Wendy Richter, but they were seen as athletes, they were seen as tough. And then it went to, okay, but now we're just going to see them as valets. And now we're going to see them as just eye candy. And now, okay, we'll acknowledge that they're athletic, but maybe not. And then it shifted, which I think, you know, obviously still to this, I mean, a huge part of that shifted to, hey, no, they're just as good as the men, to, oh, hey, yeah, no, them, yeah, they're better than the men. And it became a completely different, now it's, I mean, we've seen women main event WrestleMania. We see now the Royal Rumble is both men's and women's. What was it like for you at those different stages? Like, especially when you're first breaking in, how did that differ from where wrestling is now?
Oh, I think it's worlds. But then I go back and I say women's wrestling has always been on this ebbs and flows kind of, where it was taken seriously, not taken seriously, and all of the things. But there's certainly women in every era that were perceived as like, these are the badasses. And then there were managers and valets. I fell in love with the wrestling where everybody kind of had their roles. I love a good manager, male or female or everywhere in between. Like, I just love that managerial role because when it's done right, it's really, really special. But also I think the fans have really upped their expectations. I think when we, you know, there's a lot of things to be said about like the diva era, but one thing it did do is it ushered in this whole army of female fans, of young female fans who then go like, I want to be a diva one day. Like, you think about it now, there weren't women training to be wrestlers really before that era. When we talk about it, like there was a handful selected women, like I was one of those. But when I was training, there was probably, I don't know, 5, 10 girls on the independent scene that you could actually wrestle with, you know? And now you look at the scene and it is, you know, really vibrant and deep of like really great talent from women, from like gymnasts to, you know, all kind of athletic backgrounds and unathletic backgrounds. Now, like I'm a fan of wrestling and I've seen what these women are capable, and that means that's possible for me too, to be able to main event WrestleMania. And so it's like, it's crazy. Whereas, and I think too, sorry, I'm the long-winded one here, but on the other side of it, you go, there wasn't a lot of women behind the scenes to be able for us to like to be able to mentors. It's always been a male-dominated business in that aspect. And so I remember the one time I met Sherry, I was like, oh my God, this is the greatest day of my life. You know, like when I first met Lita, who, you know, she was on television at the time, and I was just trying to make it little accessory. The fact that she was back behind the scenes watching my match and doing all that and would take that time, like it was really, really special to me because we didn't really have that. And now there's a lot of females on the other side of the curtain now, the Gail Kims, you know, myself, there's Kelly, there's all these women who are still a part of the industry in some capacity that these other women now can go have these conversations with and help, you know, steer their careers hopefully, so it makes it a little easier for the next group, you know? That's really the cool part for me.
Yeah. Yeah, you mentioned the Divas division, and some people will look back on it in a way of, you know, not as favorably as they'll look at maybe the current women's division. And specifically, I think it's the term diva that sometimes people, I know there are other promotions that said, oh, we're not going to be divas. You had TNA's knockouts, right? Then you had just straight up women's wrestling. Do you think that people unfairly look back on the divas time? Because as you mentioned, there are a lot of the women today who grew up going, I want to be a diva.
Right.
And that's what got them in the door into pro wrestling. Do you think we just kind of look back on it maybe because of how much bigger it's become since then, that we don't really give that era the credit that it deserves?
I think, well, it's like, I think that there's always, because I feel like there was a lot of things, right? Because there were things that, like the laundry pillow fights and stuff like that. That stuff was already happening. Like, I don't know, you guys remember Sunny with the slop bucket and the whole thing. Like, there were certainly elements of that in every era, I do think that the Divas era, obviously, then with Total Divas and everything else, and so maybe the opportunities and the women weren't given as much time, and so they're trying to like do as much with what they're given. When you had moments like, if you think back before that, I mean, Trish and Lita had main evented the show, and Lisa had a hardcore match, her and Trish, and so like there were these like really awesome things that had happened, so it felt like it was like they felt like it was almost limiting the women, I think, sometimes in the fans' perspective, and they were getting really frustrated with that. So I think there's different, reasons as to why kind of people looked at it, like, But there was some awesome stuff, there was an awesome group of women, clearly, and there's a whole group of women who wanted to be divas that are now, main event in WrestleMania, so.
Yeah, and I think that's what people kind of look back on now, is it's more, maybe management's not the right term, but more of how the stories were put together, not the specific athletes that were a part of it. And in a lot of ways, people look back at it and say they should have been given more at that time. But it's great now that I think people are really appreciating it. Going back and watching on Peacock and things like that, they're able to see specifically WWE. They're able to look at it and say like, oh, okay, no, that was pretty good. Like you mentioned, right, the hardcore match, like. Yeah. That was something that at the time you're like, okay, we've never seen this before. Yeah, that was huge. Yeah. So I want to open it up to questions here. I'm sure we have some. Show of hands, who has questions? Okay. Well, all of you are going to also ask questions. So we have a microphone set up right here. So just if you want to get in line or if you just want to come right up and stand here.
Just walk to them.
I can do that too.
There you go.
That's easier.
Listen, it's your world, Mickie. I'm just living
scared to get up and walk the aisle,
It's a
I
safe
could start
place,
asking
no
them
fear.
You tell me where you want me to go first, then.
Right down there, all the way in the back. All the way in the back.
Yeah, he's determined with that hand.
Yeah, it's really high.
So it's not every day you get to go back after a decade or however long it was that you were gone and then came back for the Rumble. So just kind of tell us about that feeling of walking back into a locker room after that time in WWE.
Me?
Well, I guess both of you, right?
Yeah, we both came back. That's right. For me, it was really amazing because I was gone for a very long time. So to get that call to come back was really awesome. It was really great to go back into the locker room. I feel like there was a lot of women that I hadn't met yet that I got to get in the ring with, and it was just such a cool experience to be back there. And all the ladies were so amazing and so sweet. And yeah, it was like a homecoming, I feel like, and a reunion. So it's always great to come back and see everybody again.
How about for you, Mickie, going back there?
It was well, I was there for the first one, and like obviously, like I felt like I was a part of almost all the Rumbles in a sense, except for this last one. But yeah, I mean, it was special to be there for the first ever women's Royal Rumble, like to be a part of that, like it was special. But then coming back when I had gone away, and then coming back as the Knockouts World Champion, as to walk into the Rumble as like that was crazy. It was a crazy day.
Yeah, I wanted to ask you about that because that kind of, paved the way for Jordan Grace did it this year. Had a phenomenal showing. And I think that, which was different than from you coming back. And it's like, okay, Mickie James is back. We know her. Right. She's from here. And now she's coming in representing this other place. Whereas a Jordan Grace got an opportunity where
That audience hadn't
they
seen-
didn't know who she was.
Yeah, and what are they going to? I mean, I was feeling the same. Like, I hope they pop. Hopefully they react, right? Like, because that would not be good for me if it did.
That's the exact feeling I had too.
Oh, please
right before you
remember
go
me.
out. Yeah.
But I think that was
Yeah.
something that people are going to look back on too as a
Oh, it
pretty
was huge.
monumental.
It was
moment.
huge, and
Yeah.
I don't think that's the last time you're going to see Jordan Grace in a WWE ring, in my opinion. But I just thought
There
it
you
was.
go,
She got a huge reaction, and for someone who had not been in a WWE ring before, seen by the WWE audience, to then go out there and have not only that type of reaction, but that type of performance, like she killed it. And it was an awesome representation, and it shows like their openness to work with other companies and to acknowledge other companies and their history. Because you think about the roster right now at WWE, a lot of them were in TNA, Impact Wrestling a decade ago. They really are like top stars in both companies. They were just there. Like, I don't know that people understand or even really recognize the history that TNA has within the industry and how great of a space it is, even still, and it has been for a long time. So,
All right, another question here.
Okay, so my question is, you two had wonderful matches and rivalries with so many women. Who was your favorite rivalry and why?
For me, I loved wrestling. Me and Beth, I think, had a great rivalry, especially with the Divas Championship. I just loved wrestling her. It was so great because I looked up to Mickie because she played like. I was the babyface. I wanted to play the underdog role, and I just watched how she would go out there and get the fans to get behind her. So when I was wrestling Beth, I really tried to like mimic that. Like, I wanted the crowd and the fans to feel sorry for me, So I would always tell Beth, beat the shit out of me. Like, let's go, So, but yeah, I love our matches, and yeah.
Beth was incredible. She was one of my favorite opponents too. It was just like, it was easy. It was not. I don't want to say it was a night off because you're still going through a car wreck, right? But with someone like Beth, like, they're so good. When you have that chemistry with someone, it just makes it so easy, and you can relax and just be comfortable and lose yourself in the match. And yeah, so I love it. Thank you, by the way, for that. That was kind. But yeah, holla.
Is there somebody that you think a women's wrestler, whether it's WWE, TNA, that you look at and you say they are not either currently getting the credit they deserve, or looking back and saying that was somebody that I don't think people realize how good they were?
I think there's a ton of people like that. Like, the unsung heroes in a lot of the industry are the good hands. Like, they're the ones who go in there and they can make everybody look good on any given night, and they elevate so many superstars, and they don't always get the credit that they deserve. So you think about that. I mean, I think Jillian Hall is probably one of the best women I've ever been in the ring with, and I don't think she ever gets the credit that she deserves. And whether it was the role that she played or because it was like the mole on the face I can't speak on her behalf, but I think it was because of that position that she was put in. I don't think people really truly understand how great she is. Foxy is another one. I don't think Foxy gets the credit that she deserves on how great she is and has been. I mean, to be able to stand that machine for like 20 years almost. Natty, come on. There's just so many, and it's going to always be the case on both the male and the female side. Like, I think that's always been a thing. There's a lot of unsung heroes who have made the superstars that you love so much. So,
There were, before we go back to more questions here, Josh over here with a question. Sometimes you'll find on, especially the internet, which is just a very friendly place. You'll have
so pleasant sometimes,
There-
Whenever I'm feeling down, I just go there.
just Google your name. Just Google your name,
just-
and it's going to be all positive things, right?
I hashtag myself. It's great.
So
Most
there-
times people are really nice. I don't know why it is. It's like most people are very kind and very loving and very giving. But for whatever reason, that one
it's just loud.
just kind of
They're
like
just
glare. And then you can't forget about it. And you're like, ooh. If it was real life, like I would go to like Jay and Silent Bob, Strike Back. I just want to go to their house and just show up on their doorstep. Like, did you write this?
So there are people though, like I know Maxine Dupree is one that it's recently people have given her a real hard time. But if you also look at it, I've always looked at it saying, which one of you who's giving her a hard time would have turned down the opportunity to go into that match and try and learn and try and get better. Do you have any advice, whether it's to, and I hate to call her out specifically with it, but any wrestler that's out there that maybe they are in a spot, and specifically, as someone who was thrown right into something and kind of just, hey, yeah, you're going to be a wrestler now. Any advice for how to kind of wade through that?
I feel like Maxine kind of was brought in kind of the same way I was, and she has handled it so well. I feel like when I got thrown out there, I started at ECW, and that is not an easy crowd to get into, okay? I got called every name in the book at 19 years old. The worst things you could possibly be called, and you just kind of just take it and just like roll it off your back. Like literally, you cannot let it fester. You just have to like keep it moving. Just tune it out, basically. That's kind of what I did for so many years because Twitter just started. Oh my gosh. So I can only imagine the things that she has been going through. But I feel like she handles it very well. Like she does not care. Like she's like, this is me. I'm learning. I'm trying. Like, and it is what it is.
Right.
So, yeah.
Yeah, so any fans out there, don't be a jerk, all right?
I'll come to your house. We're going to come together. It's my Post-it notes.
All right, we have a question back there. A couple questions back there.
Okay, Mickie, this is for you, and I already asked you this face-to-face last year, but I think it's a good story. Like, when you were on the independent scene, you went by the work name Alexis Lurie. So how did you manage to do that, and then when you got to the WWE, go by your real name, Mickie James?
Oh, so, okay. So I almost debuted a couple of times, and it didn't happen, and then so then the night that I actually was going to debut came up from OVW, the storyline with Trish, and all of these things, and it was already perfectly aligned. And when it came to like, okay, what's your name going to be? I assumed Vince knew what my name was because I had been in OVW for 2.5, almost 3 years. So I'd been there for a minute, and I'd already been on television as Alexis Lurie, or like when I debuted with CM Punk on Sunday Night Heat that didn't make television. All these things, right? And so he's like, oh, what's the name? And I'm like, Alexis Lurie. He hated the name. He didn't like it. He didn't like it. So Johnny comes there. He's like, oh, well, we got to think of a new name. I was like, well, what about Mickie James? Just throwing it out there, right? Like I was like, there's no way they're gonna. It's my name. It's my real birth name. It's on my birth certificate. So I'm like, I don't have another name. Mickie James. What about Mickie James? Is that? And he took it and he goes, I love it. I love it. Like that. Uh-huh.
Why didn't you go by that in the first place?
I didn't want to be me. I was trying to be somebody else. I was trying to be Alexis. I didn't know. I was trying to be a wrestler, right? Who knew I had this cool name?
Wrestling.
The whole name. Yeah. My mom gave it to me. And then, and then I became, he liked it, and I was Mickie James. Yeah. This whole time I was running away from myself, and there I was.
That's actually what you just said there made me think. You say you were running away from yourself. Now with just that music that played when you came back in the Royal Rumble and you had that music, the music you're using in Impact, which you created. What was that like? Because even when you went by the name Mickie James, not going to say you weren't. I mean, I don't know. Maybe you were stalking Trish in real life. I'm not. It's not for me to say.
I
but
still do.
There you go. But
Instagram makes it really easy,
I feel like now you are as authentic a version of yourself as compared to at any other time before. So at what point did you kind of shift into more of that, like, hey, I'm going to allow, the country stuff to come into my persona in wrestling? And when did that kind of...
Well, I think that, that's a constant journey, right? But like I want to say give thanks to Dixie Carter, who was huge in like letting me come in and talking. Yep. When I first came back to TNA in that 2000, I mean, after leaving the company, I was heartbroken. I was kind of like all those things, like you feel like you work really hard for something and then you kind of screw it up and then you feel like, oh, what have I done? Or like you just feel so defeated, right? But I wasn't going to come back and wrestle. She made Kurt Angle call me. She kept calling me and she's like, well, just come in, you'll have great. And like, she used to work, she worked with Tanya Tucker for a while. So she worked in Nashville in the music industry and like stuff like that and like PR and stuff before. So she's like, I think that, we could do stuff with your music and we could help you there. Like just come in and just check it out. And then I actually wrote Hardcore Country with her husband, Serge. Oh, wow. Serge Salinas is the man singing Hardcore Country in the background, Mr. Carter, if you will. As well as Dale Oliver, and Dale Oliver works a lot with Jeff Hardy as well on his music. So they're great. So we sat down and we wrote this song, and and it's become to be able to come out to that with WWE. Like that's a character I would have loved to have presented to the WWE audience, and I don't think they understood what Hardcore Country and it wasn't their baby, right? Like I did that elsewhere, so it was just different, and that was kind of like so to be able to come back and do it was cool. Yeah.
Another question? Yeah.
Yay!
Hi. I just first off want to say I think I can speak for everyone here when I say thank you, both of you, for your contributions to women's wrestling and pro wrestling as a whole. This question is mainly obviously for Mickie. You obviously just talked a little bit about your music. I'm a musician myself. Out of curiosity, are you planning on pursuing anything else in music? I think you just have a very interesting look and sound to your voice. I saw that you'd written a song. I think it was a couple years back. I was just curious if you're planning on pursuing anything in music.
I do. Yeah, I'm still doing stuff. The theme song for her, the All Women's pay-per-view in Australia, is a remix of the Grown Ass Woman song, which they played out here. But I've been working. Honestly, one of the reasons why we moved to Nashville is so it would make it easier to get in the studio and find that time to sit with writers and stuff. And I don't know why. I feel like it's almost more of a challenge because it's right there. And anyway. But I've been working on this album where it's like I've written or co-written all the songs on it for the last couple of years. I've put out a lot of singles with that and have a new single coming out later this year. And then I had this other song, that I was working on, which is more like an inspirational kind of veterans-inspired song. I'm just trying to find the right person to do that with. But yeah, I'm always writing. I'm always doing that stuff. It's kind of like an outlet for me. It's just finding the time in the schedule to then get in the studio and cut it, and the musicians, and then everybody else that kind of goes with it. If you do music, it's like a whole thing. Yeah.
All right, we have great.
Thanks for asking about that, though. I appreciate it.
Another question here.
Hey, due to the recent allegations against Vince McMahon, what safety protocols and procedures would you guys like to see in place to protect our female superstars? And also, if there is somebody that's still out there that is struggling to come forward with the allegations or something that happened to them, what would you say to them?
That's a heavy question, and I think that, it's really hard to tell someone how to tell their story, especially if they're not ready to tell their story. Like that's their choice, and when and if they're comfortable, and there's really no obligation to them to have to tell everyone in the world. I think that's a very personal decision. I would like to see, and I think that it's starting to slowly implement, is just more women behind the scenes in those positions where the women can come to and have those relationships with. That would be one huge step, and I think that a lot of companies are starting to step up and do that. But yeah, everywhere should be a safe place for us just to be and do what we love to do, always.
We've got another question here. We have time for a couple more. Yeah.
What's your guys' dream match and why?
So what is your dream match and why? Kelly, we'll start with you. Kelly, Barbie, whatever.
I'm gonna get a one-on-one match with Kelly.
I know.
With Barb, we've tagged.
So many
Yeah.
times. I love tagging with you.
Thank
I had
you.
the best
Same.
time. We had so much fun, especially on house shows.
Yeah. House show matches, honestly,
Oh my
TV wrestling on television is fun and it's amazing, and people, you get to be seen by people all over the world. But it's also so stressful. It's just a day of like the highest anxiety, stress levels that you can imagine, starting from when you walk in the door and sit in the makeup, the whole thing, right? Like you're on all day. But house shows and traveling the road, and that part of it is the greatest part, because that's where your friendships are made and bonded. We have a fun story actually about being on the road together. When I popped my boob and she fell asleep, I drove her. Listen, so Kelly is like 19 years old. No, you're just a baby. She was just a baby. And it's like one of her first loops on the road, like really like, because it was ECW or whatever. And we traveled together, John, and I'm like, she's the best and I love her. But I'm like, she could eat McDonald's, at 3 a.m. It didn't matter, right? I was so jealous. I'm like, I just look at the nugget. I just look at it wrong.
And then she'd be like, "Are you going to the gym today?" And I'd be like, "I'm gonna go sleep in the locker
Yeah,
room."
and I'm in there sweating, So then we're on, and to be fair, like we're on this whole loop, and they were long drives, like these drives that were in between. And I think that we were on fairly like later in the night. And plus, you weren't. It's common now for people to leave right after their matches and stuff. That was not allowed. Like we had to stay through to the main event. Didn't be disrespectful. Yeah, right. Like we watched the whole show, unless it was like a real bad weather or something like that. Like, okay, you girls get out of here. We all stayed till the end of the show and watched the main event. But so we're driving or whatever. So this one night, I don't know the town, God forbid, but I do know it was like backwoods driving and stuff. And so, but it was in like a real small, like one of the smaller cities outside, because it was a house show. And somewhere in the match, I popped my implant. I got kicked. Something happened, and it was an explosion, right? And I'm like, oh no, I think and the doc kind of checked to make sure, yeah, flat tire, right? And I'm like, oh man, this sucks. And I'm like, okay, what are we gonna do? And like there weren't any like real flight. I was like, you know what? And also I didn't want Barbie to go by herself because she's 19 on the road by herself. I'm like, no way am I gonna send her through the backwoods of West Virginia just like traveling by herself. I love West Virginia, by the way. I'm East Virginia, I'm the other side. Anyway, so and we're driving, and like I look over like 2 hours in, and she's fast asleep like a little angel, like a little sweet baby angel.
Oh my God,
It's one of my favorite stories. And sorry, I thought you guys would appreciate it. Yeah, we got there fine, and then I flew out the next morning, and then I got it fixed. Yeah, I got it fixed.
Oh gosh, but back to the question.
Well, yeah, but the question I believe was who would you like to?
I love Chelsea Green. I would love
Chow.
to have a match with her. I just think it's such a huge compliment. She just did a podcast with Chris Van Leet, and he was like, oh, Kelly, something got brought up. And she was like, I love Kelly. I mimicked my gear off Kelly. And it's just so cool to like hear stuff like that because, coming up, I was not a wrestler, and and to have women that are coming up now saying that, oh, I wanted to be like you, is just like the biggest compliment. So I think having a match with her would be like coming full circle.
Yeah. That'd be awesome.
How about you, Mickie? Is there anybody that you look at and you go, man, I'd like to just get in the ring with them?
I think there's always that, right? Like, I think I've answered, there were women who I didn't even realize that I wanted to feud with in this last rodeo stuff with Jordan Grace and with Deonna Purrazzo, who's like one of the best in the world. Like, she's just incredible. So, Rhea Ripley, I think Rhea would be amazing. She was still in NXT kind of coming up when I was there last, and then you've seen her, like, evolvement into who she's incredible. Incredible, yeah. A lot of them. Everybody. Let's fight everybody. Yeah.
So when I took my first bump, I remember it knocked the wind out of me. Do you all have any funny stories about bumping for the first time?
It just hurt a lot. It hurt a lot. I had bruises in places that I didn't know I could bruise just from hitting the ropes, you know? Yeah. Even now when I bump sometimes, I forget, like if you haven't wrestled in a minute and you get back in there in that first one and you're like, oh yeah, this is not pleasant. Why did I choose to do this?
I think the running the ropes for me was I did not.
Yeah.
Hence why I hardly hit them, because it was not fun.
Another one. Mickie, what was it like working with Alexa Bliss? I love her, but I just needed to ask what it was like working with her.
She's so fun. We bounced off each other really well and like just had really good chemistry, but she was super fun to work with, and I think that hopefully I helped her in a lot of ways, you know, like understand just different parts of it, and like the two of us together, like you have to have good chemistry, especially when you're going to be paired with someone for so long. So yeah, she's great. She's great. I think she's coming back soon, right? I feel the rumble. Yeah, in the jungle. No, I don't know for the rumble exactly. The royal. I feel like that's a long ways away. I'm like, oh, she's gonna start milking it now. Yeah.
So we've got time for two more here.
Let us see. So you talked about lots and lots of great female wrestlers. How about Santina Marella? How is it like wrestling with her?
Santini. I know there's a lot of like mixed emotions about Santina Marella. Like, it was entertaining. God, Santino is one of the funniest people on the planet, actually, if you get a chance. Like, nonstop laughter with tears in my eyes, most times. Yeah.
He was fun.
Yeah. What about Oh, sorry. Oh, I'm so sorry I took your question.
All right,
Go ahead.
We'll do it.
We'll do two more.
We got time for a few.
I ruined it.
Hello. If you guys could pick anybody to play you in a biopic about your life, who would you pick and why?
Oh my God, I don't know.
Margot Robbie.
Oh,
All right.
okay. Well, she had the answer in the cut, ready to
you've
go.
been thinking about that one.
I don't even know. I'm gonna go J-Lo. Can J-Lo play me? Thank you. I'm gonna have that forever glow.
All right.
So I heard you talking about Rhea Ripley, and I was wondering if you liked her new look or her old look better.
I like her all looks. I like all her looks. Like, this one obviously is really, really cool. It's edgy, and it's very much like she's a woman. Yeah. Yeah, and it's different than, I always love when you look different and are presented different than everyone else, right? Like, we try to shy away from the things that make us different, but those things that make us different are the things that make us so special, right? So we should highlight them and embrace them. So.
All right, I know I said the last one. Does anyone have a really good question for our last question?
No.
I'm gonna let you pick. Tell me where to go.
I don't even know.
Barbie, you pick.
Oh, okay, right here, blue shirt.
Hold on, here you go.
She's like, I don't even need a microphone.
No. Oh, for the live stream. Okay. For the women in the room that are looking to break into that scene, when you think about the characteristics that you brought in from a young woman and the characteristics that you learned later on, what skill would you prioritize?
The skill to be kind and patient with yourself, you know, because it's a journey for the whole thing. And you think you understand and you realize you don't, and then you think you got it and you don't. Like, there's always, and I think that's just a life lesson, honestly, in anything that you're trying to pursue, is like you have to be kind and forgiving to yourself, because we are our worst critics, because we demand perfection out of ourselves all the time, and our relationships and all these other things, and you just have to learn to chill out.
Have patience with yourself, for sure.
All right, well, thank you, everybody, very much.
Thank you.
And
Thank
thank
y'all
you
so
for
much.
being here. Ladies and gentlemen,
Yay.
Barbie Blank / Kelly Kelly and Mickie James.